Good evening, wanderers and weirdos, and welcome back to Night Whispers. Tonight's story is a little different, thank you, because somewhere in the deep forests, somewhere beyond the rivers and the mountains, there is a school. Not a school for ordinary people. This is a place where vampires study, besides werewolves, where fairies argue with elves, where gnomes take notes in tiny leather books. Thank you guys, you're awesome. And where mermaids walk the halls, thanks to a potion brewed by a very mysterious witch. The students call it the Academy of the Hidden World. But the strangest part, their professor, the one who teaches them all how to control their gifts, is a creature most humans think is only a legend. The professor is Bigfoot. Tonight, we begin the first chapter. Story 1. The first night at the academy. The academy stood deep in a forest where the trees grew so tall they blocked the moonlight. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned stone castle. Moss covered the walls, ivy crawled up the towers, but if you stepped through the old wooden doors, you would hear laughter, wings fluttering, claws tapping, and voices speaking in 100 strange languages. Because inside that castle lived creatures most humans believed were myths. A vampire named Lucian leaned against a staircase, pale and elegant, reading an ancient book bound in red leather. Across the hall, a young werewolf named Mara paced back and forth, trying very hard not to transform before class started. "Relax," Lucian said calmly. "It's only your first day." "My claws come out when I'm nervous," Mara muttered. Near the fireplace, three gnomes sat on the stack of books, arguing about mathematics. Fairies hovered above them like glowing fireflies, and near the giant windows sat 2 young mermaids. Their names were Corolla and Neris. Just hours earlier, they had been swimming in the cold depths of the ocean, but now they stood on human legs, slightly unsteady. The potion that allowed them to breathe air and walk on land had been brewed by Madame Thorne, the Academy's head witch. "It lasts 3 days," Corolla had whispered nervously. "3 days?" Neris said. "That's barely enough time to learn how to walk." Before either of them could panic further, thump, thump, heavy footsteps echoed through the castle halls. Every student went silent. The massive wooden classroom doors creaked open, and filling the doorway was a creature over 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur, broad shoulders, eyes that were old, wise, and surprisingly kind. The student straightened instantly because standing before them was Professor Bramble, the one humans called Bigfoot. He stepped into the room, the floorboards groaning beneath his weight. Then he placed a giant hand on the desk and looked at the class. "Welcome," he rumbled. His voice sounded like distant thunder. "This academy exists for one reason." His eyes moved across the room. Vampire, werewolf, fairy, elf, gnome, mermaid. To teach creatures like you how to live in a world that fears you. A fairy slowly raised her hand. Professor Bramble tilted his head. "Yes?" Professor, is it true you once fought a dragon?" The giant creature sighed. "Yes." The class leaned forward eagerly. "And did you win?" the fairy asked. Professor Bramble scratched his chin. "Technically, no." The students gasped. "What happened?" The professor gave a small smile. "We became friends." The room erupted in laughter. But the moment didn't last long, because outside the castle walls, something moved in the forest. Something watching the academy. Something that did not want these creatures learning to live together. And far away, a pair of glowing red eyes opened in the darkness. The semester was about to become very dangerous. Chapter 2. The Witch's Potion. The next morning at the Academy of the Hidden World began with chaos. Not the quiet kind either, the loud kind. The fairy had set someone's notebook on fire. A werewolf had accidentally shredded a chair. And one of the gnomes had somehow fallen asleep inside a teapot. Professor Bramble stood at the front of the classroom, arms folded across his enormous chest. "Class," he rumbled. No one listened. "Class." The windows rattled when he spoke. Everyone froze. Except the teapot gnome. A small cough came from the doorway. The students turned to see a tall woman dressed entirely in deep black robes. Her silver hair was braided down her back, and several tiny bottles hung from a belt around her waist. This was Madame Thorne, the head witch. The room instantly became quiet. "Good morning," she said calmly. Her voice was soft, but there was something powerful behind it. "Professor Bramble asked me to visit today because we have new students." Her eyes drifted toward the two mermaids. Coralla and Neris immediately stood straighter. Madame Thorne walked toward them slowly. "In order for mermaids to attend this academy," she explained to the class, "a potion must be brewed, one that allows them to walk on land and breathe air." She pulled a tiny glass vial from her belt. Inside, it swirled a glowing blue liquid. Each, vi- each vial lasts 3 days, she continued. After that, you return to the sea. The class leaned forward. Unless, she added quietly, you learn how to brew it yourselves. Now everyone was interested. Even Lucian, the vampire, looked impressed. Madame Thorne handed the vial to Coralla. Guard it carefully. But before Coralla could answer, a loud crash came from outside the castle walls. Everyone turned toward the windows. Something large had moved in the forest. Branches snapped. Birds exploded into the sky. Professor Bramble's expression changed instantly. That calm teacher looked vanished. Now he looked like the creature legends warned about. Everyone stay inside, he said quietly. Thank you. Professor, Mara, the werewolf asked. Bramble moved toward the doors. Something is watching the academy. Chapter 3. The creature in the woods. The forest outside the academy was ancient, older than cities, older than maps. Professor Bramble stepped out into the shadows of the trees, listening carefully. Behind him, several students had ignored his instructions and crept outside. Lucian, Mara, the 2 mermaids, and a very curious fairy named Luma. You were told to stay inside, Bramble said, without turning around. Mara shrugged. Werewolves don't follow rules very well. Thank you. A low growl rolled through the trees. Not a wolf, not a bear, something deeper. The ground vibrated silently. Even Bramble looked uneasily. From between the trees, a massive shape slowly stepped into the moonlight. The students gasped. It was another creature, like Bramble, but larger, wilder. Its fur was matted. Its eyes burned with anger. Lucian whispered, another Bigfoot. Bramble stepped forward slowly. I was hoping you wouldn't find this place, he said. The creature snarled. You teach them, the creature growled. Its voice sounded like breaking stone. Vampires, wolves, sea creatures, winged things. The creature's gaze swept across the students. They should not live together. Coralla stepped forward nervously. Why not? The creature's eyes flashed. Because humans already hunt us. The forest fell silent. Professor Bramble looked back at the students. This, he said quietly, is why the academy exists. The other Bigfoot bared its teeth. You're building an army? No, Bramble said. I'm building peace. For a moment, no one moved. Then the wild creature stepped back into the shadows. But peace, it growled, will bring war. And just like that, the forest went quiet again. But every student knew something new. The academy wasn't just a school. It was a secret, and secrets never stay hidden forever. Chapter 4. The Secret Beneath the Academy. The next day, the academy felt different, quieter. Even the fairies whispered instead of shouting. Everyone had seen the wild creature in the forest the night before. Everyone knew. Now the academy had enemies. Professor Bramble stood in the great hall beside Madame Thorn. "You all saw what waits outside these woods," he said. "But there is something you must understand." He walked to the center of the room and stomped his foot once. The stone floor shifted. A hidden staircase slowly opened. Gasps filled the hall. "This academy," Bramble said, "was not built as a school." He looked at the students carefully. It was built as a sanctuary. The students followed him down the spiral stairs. Torchlight flickered along ancient stone walls. At the bottom of the stairs was a massive underground chamber. Carvings covered the walls. Dragons, giants, witches, creatures that had vanished from the human world long ago. "This place was built hundreds of years ago," Madame Thorn explained, "when humans began hunting anything they didn't understand. When humans began hunting." Lucian ran his fingers over a carving of a vampire. "So this place protected us?" "Yes," she said. "But protection never lasts forever." Before anyone could ask another question, the ground trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Something had struck the outer walls of the academy hard. This is where we end for the night, guys.